Prof Antonio, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonie van Nieuwkerk. I work at the Wits School of Governance, and I'll be directing the program this morning, which is a memorial service for Professor Ivor Sarakinsky, a colleague and a friend, and for some of us, a family member. I'll explain the program in a minute. But I want to start by saying that it's an emotional day for many of us. I recall Ivor joining Wits University around 2006, and I do recall that I was on the selection panel that recommended his appointment to the then Wits School of Public and Development Management, which many of you know as P&DM. And at the school, Ivor made his mark very quickly as a dedicated teacher. And as you will hear later from colleagues, a sought-after supervisor, and I think that tells a story in itself. He was also very prominent in committees, including the academic office, together with me more than once. And we went through trials and tribulations. I'm very happy to say that we have a short but sharp and powerful lineup of colleagues and family who remembers Ivor and who will pay tribute. In fact, we will start with messages from the head of school, Professor Mzu Kobo, and from the Dean of the Faculty of Commerce, Law and Management, Professor Imran Valodia. We will have a brief photo session, and you've heard the music already at the introduction. This is the kind of music that Ivor liked. And then we will have a series of tributes from colleagues at school, but also students, and the family will speak last. And then I'll round up. We won't go beyond 12:30 this morning. So welcome all, and thank you for joining us. And let me ask Professor Mzu to give us his message.
Thank you, Antonie, and thanks, colleagues, to also just welcome family and friends to this moment of celebration, to celebrate Ivor's life. And just on behalf of the Wits School of Governance, I would like to thank Ivor's family for allowing us to honor his memory. As the school and the university community, it gives us a moment to join with his family and friends to celebrate Ivor's life and work. We spend a better part of our existence in the workplace. When we depart, we would like our colleagues to reflect on our character and the kind of individuals we were at work. So this is for us both a solemn and a solemn moment and a moment of celebration, because it allows us a space to reflect on the kind of individual that Ivor was, his attributes, his persona, his grace, his warmth. He was a big person, not just at the school, but both at the school and outside of the school, generously sharing his who he was, his knowledge, his intellect, his humor, his work ethic. The work environment is a community and a place where we use our expertise to shine light on humanity, and a large part of Ivor's life was dedicated to the Wits School of Governance. He shared the best of himself at the service of his colleagues in many ways that were meaningful, and I would say in ways that were beautiful. He contributed immense value to the work of the Wits School of Governance, to its identity, and to the welfare of many academics, especially the young academics. He would always insist that when new academics join the school, that they need a soft landing, even when there was pressure to allocate someone workload. He would stand his ground and say they deserve a soft landing. They need to acclimatize to their school's environment. They need to feel welcomed, and that was the kind of person that Ivor was. He also mentored a scores of master's and PhD students in the course of his life as an academic. He has been an inspiration to many of those who work in professional and administrative services at the school, not just academics, but those who were at the administrative end of the school, always encouraging and supporting them. And I'm sure Kamantha will say quite a bit on this. Ivor was also kind of figure, he strikingly as a father figure to many colleagues as a teacher. I met Ivor for the first time in May last year when I took up this role as head of school, and the meeting was ready to ask him to take on a very challenging role as academic director, and he agreed to take on this role with enthusiasm, bringing his full energy and intellect into it. As academic director, he was responsible for the core business of the school. The school exists for academic programs. He was a conscience of our practices and ensured that our governance procedures were adhered to. He was the lifeblood of our academic programs. Without that office and without Ivor, our programs would be in disarray. It was in this capacity that I got to work with Ivor very, very closely. As academic director, he took on enormous responsibilities that came with a lot of stress, including having to manage the activities of academic staff, strengthening the governance processes and procedures, getting staff to perform on their roles, working on postgrad matters as chair of our postgrad committee, as well as interacting with faculty on matters to do with academic programs and student appeals. He believed that the school was a citadel of knowledge. He had this almost spiritual view about the role of an academic institution in society, and that it's got to be molded into an elite institution, and that it should not be corrupted, or that standards should never be lowered. So this, whenever Ivor would stand his ground on these issues, and to a large part, I think our character as a school and the respect that we have outside of the school is credit to Ivor. He was a general on the firing line as a person who had to mediate academic disputes, get colleagues to perform, and deal directly with students' complaints. He always was professional and effective at what he did. Never once complained. Never once bargained for his own personal interests. Never once wanted to take shortcuts, never once spoke ill of another colleague. What many wouldn't know about Ivor but colleagues at the school are familiar with, is that he had a funny side to him. It didn't matter how tense a situation was, he would always start a meeting either with a joke or put up a cartoon that eased up the atmosphere. And he would always close a meeting with some form of benediction where he would always wish everyone well, exhort us to take good care of ourselves and to stay safe. And those who were in academic staff meetings or in the postgraduate committee would always remember this. He wouldn't close a meeting without a positive word of encouragement. Personally, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with Ivor. He poured his life into his work. He poured his life into the school. He gave us the best of himself. He carried himself with integrity and expressed the virtues of hard work and excellence in all that he did. Without fail, Ivor always worked in the best interest of the school. He always worked in the best interest of the school. The arguments he would have with us, he would have with colleagues, were always in the best interest of the school. He lived for the Vet School of Governance. And at the Vet School of Governance, we will miss Ivor dearly. And personally, I really feel blessed and enriched to have known and worked with Ivor. I really pray for strength and comfort to his family, especially his wife, Reveal, who I've spoken a few times on the phone, and his daughter, Anna. I trust that as a school, as a university colleague, and as friends who've known Ivor, we will all reflect on Ivor's life, a life well lived, and that we will draw inspiration from his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mizu. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Professor Valodia, the Dean of the Faculty of Commerce, Law and Management, for his message. Imran?
The members of Ivor's family, his colleagues at WSG, his colleagues in the university, friends, colleagues, it's a great honor for me to say a few words at the celebration of Ivor's life. I want to restrict my comments to a few issues kind of around the Ivor that I knew, which was essentially kind of his activities related to the university. In the 15 odd years that he was at Wits, I think it would be fair to say that Ivor had managed to make himself something of a legend at the university, and the kind of remarks that I'd like to make really relate to that. The first set of issues I'd like to highlight is his work as his kind of work as an academic. I think both in terms of the kind of clarity, the perceptiveness, and the insight that he brought to his work on politics in South Africa, and to his work on managing the green transition in South Africa. I think Ivor really displayed his enormous talents as as a researcher. It's quite fashionable now to be talking about the green economy, but I think it's a real symbol of kind of Ivor's contributions as as an academic, that that he was really a bit of a kind of a path breaker in this area. And it's not at all surprising that when the Economic Development Department kind of opted to start thinking about the green economy and the complex transition that South Africa had to make, that they approached the university to kind of allow us to kind of second to the Economic Development Department. I think his kind of really interesting kind of research on the state of our politics is also a hallmark of the work that he's done. Ivor really loved to teach, and the courses that he taught on public institutions, on kind of questions of the environment, were kind of always both loved by his students, and brought tremendous insights into how kind of how to teach in these complex areas. From the feedback that we got, it was clear that his students loved him, but he was also known as someone who was both fair and tough, and really demanded a lot of his students. He brought really strong academic and theoretical understanding to his work on public policy issues, and he combined his experience, his passion, and his academic rigor to kind of all of his teaching. Can academic institutions survive really on those who put up their hands to kind of do the work that is sometimes not quite in their personal interest? And I think Ivor was really someone who was the exemplar of the academic colleague who kind of put the interests of the team before his own personal interests. He was always happy to help, kind of always the builder of the school, kind of always offering to help, and kind of always putting his hand up to do the tasks of managing the school, managing the academic programs, managing the development of new kind of curricula, putting his kind of hands up to be the problem solver, and kind of selflessly working towards building the school and building the university. I'd like to publicly acknowledge the kind of enormous value of the advice that he gave me, and the help that he kind of provided that he provided to me in kind of ensuring that we steered his school in a way that would be make it a productive school, but one that was really committed committed to his students. Ivor was kind of also the exemplar of the need for kind of academics to engage in public discourse. We kind of always saw him on kind of ENCA, making really perceptive comments on the complex issues of the day. He was a loved colleague among us, kind of insightful, kind of amusing, and for those of us who knew him, we kind of really appreciated his humor, and to display the fact that he was not perfect, he did support Arsenal. He was a real gentle colleague, brilliant, and committed to the university. On behalf of the university's leadership, I'd like to pass on our deepest condolences to his family, to his friends, and to his colleagues. Lastly, to Ivor, you were an absolute legend. Go well, and you will always be with us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you very much for a heartfelt message from yourself, but also on behalf of the university. There's a very brief musical and interlude now with a photo montage that I think will cross the screen momentarily. And after that, we will proceed with some tributes from colleagues and family.
There must be some kind of way out of here, said a joker to the thief. There's too much confusion, I can't get no relief. Businessman there, drink my wine, plowman dig my earth. None will ever own the mine, nobody of it is worth. Hey. No reason to get excited, but be kind exposed. There are many here among us who feel that life is but a joke. But you and I, we've been through that, and this is not our fate. So let us start talking falsely now. The hour's getting late. Hey!
Thanks, Loratu, for the musical interlude and the pictures. quite moving. We're going to turn to tributes from the school first. Let me ask Professor Pandi Pillay to start off. Pandi, over to you.
Anthony, thank you very much. Dr. Revo Nasi, Ms. Hannah Sarakinsky, other members of the Sarakinsky family, Wits colleagues, and others joining this memorial service. Ivor's passing represents a great personal loss, as well as an immeasurable loss for the School of Governance and the Wits community more broadly. As has been said elsewhere, Ivor was a great teacher, a committed mentor to many, many research students, and an outstanding academic administrator. The large number of eloquent and moving tributes from his former students, I think, is testimony to his contribution to higher education. I have been associated with the school in varying capacities during the past 2 decades. And I can say with a great deal of confidence that Ivor was without doubt one of the outstanding academics in the history of the School of Governance. His commitment to teaching and research was unparalleled. Ivor was devoted to students, so much so that he carried one of the highest teaching and research supervision loads in the school. As we all know, he was tough with students, but also fair, often pointing out to students the importance of education for their own development and the need to ensure and maintain high standards. In addition, he took on the post of academic director on a number of occasions and was still holding this post at the time of his death. He was uniquely qualified to be the academic director, given the depth of knowledge he possessed about the university's rules and regulations and the application and relevance to the school. However, as has been pointed out by the dean and the head of school, Ivor was no ivory tower academic. He was always keen to go outside the university and apply his knowledge and skills to real-world situations. As was already stated, he was seconded to the Department of Economic Development, where he sought to practically apply his public policy knowledge, particularly with relevance to the green economy. And more recently, especially since the outbreak of COVID-19, he has been a prominent public intellectual, articulating with great fervor the public policy and governance challenges associated with the spread of the pandemic. Ivor's passing is undoubtedly a great loss for the school and the broader university community. His passion for higher education was reflected, amongst other things, by his long and passionate commitment to various university committees on teaching and learning. I want to focus here also on what some of our overseas colleagues who worked with Ivor, me, and other WSG colleagues on a European Union research project on the EU and global justice between 2016 and 2020 have said about Ivor's passing. Professor Ben Tondra from Dublin, Ireland said, "Desperately sorry for you all. Please accept my deepest sympathies. Ivor was all you say he was, but he was also a lovely human being and great company. Ar dihes de go rahib a anam, which is Irish Gaelic for may his soul be on God's right hand. Professor Thomas Diaz from Germany, with whom Ivor worked on the green economy, says, "This is a shock. My thoughts are with you and everyone who knew Ivor. May he rest in peace. I was lucky to have met him and that we were able to exchange our views." Professor Sonia Lucarelli from Bologna in Italy says, "What terrible news. Ivor was a really lovely person and I'm deeply sorry for his departure. I am very close to you for the loss of a friend and colleague." Professor Helene Schussen from Oslo, Norway. "I am so terribly sorry to hear this. Ivor was an incredibly kind, supportive, and generous man. A great loss indeed. My deepest sympathies to you and your colleagues." I quote these colleagues here because they knew Ivor for a relatively short time on his visits to Norway, Germany, and India during the research period. Yet they were able to get a good grasp of his academic intellect and his personal generosity in this very, very short period. In conclusion, I would like to reflect briefly on his legacy for us here at the School of Governance. There are two aspects to this, I think. First, there was his personal tenacity in upholding the rules of the university and to attempt changing them only when necessary and then using the proper channels in the institution. There was never an attempt on his part to ignore or to circumvent university rules. And I think there is clearly a lesson here for all of us. Secondly, I think we would do well to reflect on his contribution to the academic project, reflected most prominently in teaching and research supervision excellence. To honor his memory and his achievements, I think we should attempt to emulate these achievements as we face the growing challenges, both at WITS and in higher education, and more broadly in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pandi. Professor Pillay is our research director at the school. Thanks very much. I'm going to ask Kamantha Governor to speak next. She's the school's communications manager. Kamantha.
Thank you, Prof. Anthony. Hello, everyone. Special greetings to Dr. Revel, Nasi, and Hannah. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I am Kamantha, and I started working with Ivor in 2016. And he was the first person to take me out for coffee. And I sat across this talking book of knowledge in awe, because his passion for academia was so contagious, and it was so clear that his institutional knowledge was just so deep and so potent. So a lovely healthy relationship had started that day. But our personal getting to know each other as people actually started when Merle, one of our former colleagues, and I was having a conversation and walking towards our cars. And I was telling Merle about this relationship that I was in, with the Jewish man and all of the traditions and cultural things that I'd appreciated about it. And I didn't know that Ivor was actually listening on in this conversation and walking behind me. And, Ivor being Ivor said something very snarky and like, "You silly little girl, what were you thinking?" or something to that effect. And, we bonded on a very, very human level. So there's so much of things that I'm going to miss about him because he's concise and he's clear. categorically clear when he needs something from you. And so that's basically every communicator's dream. But the things that I'm going to miss about him the most is this, our banter, our Man United Arsenal banter, because that is something that happened so in such a cute way. And it was also something that reminded me of my bond with my dad. So we managed to keep that alive, and I loved that. And I'm sure many of you might not know this, but Ivor spoke Beyonce. Ivor would find me the most apt Beyonce song and video and send it to me to cheer me up whenever I was going through something. So it wasn't just words of counsel, it was Beyonce videos. And I am definitely going to miss that. And every time I listen to the Queen, I will definitely smile and think about you. Ivor was my cynical touchstone. I love wit and I love sarcasm, and he offered it in truckloads. Ivor was my rock at WSG. He was my go-to person, difficult realities in situations that needed it. But he also genuinely cared about my mental health and my emotional well-being. So I'd often say to him, hey, Merlin, I need to talk, and Merlin would appear and we would have all of, these deep conversations, and he would offer his sage advice. And, it always feels so good after that. So when I was at the DG building, his office was across mine. So he'll always stop by and say hi. And when we moved out of the DG building, he still made time to come into my office and sit and talk to me. And it was glorious. I'm going to miss our random conversations about bunny chows. And sometimes he used to even sound like an Indian uncle, and he'll say to me, when are you getting married? Because I need to clear my schedule and I need to write my speech. Those are things that I'm truly, truly going to miss. Many people call him Prof, but I call him Rockstar because he was super, super helpful with our events. He would be the first person to respond, to put up his hand, to volunteer to moderate, or to want to be a panelist, or to give us perspective on how to frame an event at the school. He was superb at that. And, he's obviously, as being the academic director, he was one of the most busiest people, but he was also one of the first people to respond, always. And that was so amazing, about him. So the next time I have to compile the media report, it's going to be very heartbreaking, because it'll be the last time that I write, Prof Ivor did an interview in News 24, or Prof Ivor submitted this op-ed to this paper, because our media reports reads Ivor. And even if the BBC in the UK called it like 6 in the morning, he would make a plan and he would get the interviews done for us with such passion and joy. So I'm going to really miss you. I am truly, truly going to miss you. And my brain has not reconciled quite yet how I'm going to navigate, these times without you. But the one thing I commit to is to living life as joyfully and as brave as humanly possibly, that I can, in a way to honor you. In August, I said to him, I always told him how much I appreciated him. And in August, I said to him, I'm so glad that our paths had crossed. And he said, he feels the same way. And I said to him, virtually, pinky finger promise that you're not leaving this anytime soon. And he was like, of course not, Samantha. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm going to be around for a bit longer. And obviously, life has its own plans. And we may not always understand them. And yeah, so on that note, I say farewell to an amazing, amazing man. And to Revel and Anna, both of you have been the epitome of grace with the manner that in which you have dealt with us, with keeping us updated, putting this event together. The strength and the courage has just been so phenomenal. So thank you. And I wish you comfort, I wish you joy, and I wish you a very long life. And as Beyonce would sing and say, heaven couldn't wait for you. Heaven couldn't wait for you, Ivor. She'd also say, I can see your halo now, but then I know that will just make you roll your eyes. So that's where I leave it. And I say, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And I thank you, Ivor, for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamantha. Thank you very much. Beyonce, I didn't know. Friends and colleagues, I want to introduce Mankosana Ngomen Zulu to you, who will speak next, except her connection to this online event is unstable. So her message will be read by a colleague who's already online, Laratu. Mankosana, as many of you know, was probably Ivor's right-hand person, not only for Ivor, but for all of us who had the opportunity to be an academic director or manage the academic project. And in that sense, Mankosana is really the anchor of the office, and very close to any academic director, and worked very closely with Ivor. We know that, and it's unfortunate that she can't speak to us live, but Laratu has gotten hold of the presentation that Mankosana was going to make. Let me ask Laratu to step in now.
Thank you, Prof. Antoni, and good morning to everyone that's been able to join us today. I'm just going to read Mankosana's message on her behalf. To lose someone who was a mentor, a leader, it was a bitter wrench. He held my hand, groomed and supported me over the years. The pain of losing him cut deep to my core. If I could talk about Prof Sarakinsky, I'll take the whole day and night. There were sad moments, moments of laughter, and serious moments. Some people may have never witnessed him laughing. Some were fortunate enough to witness him laughing. He appreciated people's efforts and was concerned with procedures and rules. He exuded authority. I'll share a story that has stayed with me. One day when he came in late and he shared his experience with some of us about his car. On that day, he looked at me and said, Mankosana, I took my car for service and the mechanic told me that he can no longer service the car. The mechanic had been fixing the car for some time. He said to me, you know, I managed to fix the car, to fix 60% of the car while the mechanic was unable to fix it, and he will finish the job later. I laughed because I knew his car. My thoughts were that the mechanic had been servicing the car for more than 15 years now. I was asking myself why he would go underneath the car with the spanner, busy jerking the car, trying to fix it to a good condition. The answer was, he didn't want to let go because he loved the car. When you love something, it's difficult to let go. He loved his car as much as he loved his job, and he defended the school's integrity at all levels. He was the type of person who took his work seriously and loved and worked excessively hard. He hated long, endless meetings. His death imprisoned me in agony, pain, and misery. He will be remembered solely for his professionalism and sense of humor during our academic meetings. My heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, students, the Viz community at large, and please know that God only takes the best. His teachings and memories will live with us, and he will be in our hearts forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Laratu. Laratu is our events coordinator, including for today. Thanks for reading that on behalf of Mankosana. I know that she means every word. And by the way, many of us know Ivor's car, that light blue Toyota of unclear date of manufacture. He's been driving it for many, many years. I think his wife will tell us later how old that car is. Okay. I want to move to tributes from students. Colleagues and friends, you might notice in the chat box many messages of support and celebration including from many, many students. And that is one of the aspects of Ivor's life that we need to celebrate. One of his big achievements is to grow a generation of educated and skilled public servants and policy analysts. What a fantastic achievement. In fact, as Pandi has hinted at earlier, his role as a supervisor was really oversubscribed. He couldn't cope with the load and he couldn't say no. And that is a remarkable feat and a sign of a great intellect. And we are privileged to have two students who will make a tribute now. Let me invite Richard Jurgens to speak to us now. You have to unmute yourself first, Richard.
Thanks, Prof Ntoni, for inviting me and the School of Governance to speak in this sad memorial for Prof Ivor Sarakinsky. I must say it's a great sadness to pay tribute to the life of someone who still had so much to do and give and has been taken early. This is unfortunately something I've had to do several times now in my life in respect of great people I felt privileged to know and whose early passing was, in my view, a loss to the country. And Ivor, if I may use his name and not his title, is for me one of those people. I suppose one reason I'm speaking today is because my connection with him went back a long time, even though our lives took different directions and we hadn't been in contact for many years. Other contributors to this memorial know much more about his activities as a civil servant and academic researcher than I do, and they've outlined these aspects of the man as they saw him. My knowledge of him from the earlier parts of our lives began when we were fellow students at Wits in the early 1980s, and my reacquaintance with him came when he was by then a well-established professor at the School of Governance, where I'm doing a research thesis. So we met, as I mentioned, back in those early days as fellow students at Wits, and it was a time of tremendous turmoil, both on campus and off. The country was still under apartheid, that misguided evil dispensation. The nationalist government at the time was subverting efforts to end that system by any and all means, which included, in our local case, posting spies, supporting right-wing groups, and beating down on protests on campus. Aside from this, it was a strange time to be a student at one of the country's premier liberal universities for a paradoxical reason, which was that it was the institution's liberal ethos that made much of the diversity of political activity on campus possible. And yet, if you looked around, the teaching and discussion of liberal ideas was frowned on, if not actively suppressed. So, for instance, in my philosophy courses, I was able to study Jean-Paul Sartre, but not Isaiah Berlin. And academic credibility, as we know, may often be a matter of political fashion as much of intellectual standing. Ivor and I met through an informal circle of friends and acquaintances that used to gather at the tables of the canteen in the Senate House concourse. At the time, students tended to congregate socially in groups that were closely aligned to their studies or their political affiliations. And the distinguishing feature of this group was that it consisted of people who were studying in different areas: philosophy, politics, education, physics, computer science, comparative literature, English, psychology, to name a few. One of us described it as the University of Senate House Department of Canteen Studies. And Rashad Begas, who's a longtime member of its staff, was the resident general philosopher. When we met again years later, Ivor and I agreed that it was the discussions that emerged spontaneously at these at those Senate House tables that formed us as much as any formal courses or tutoring that we received. What they inculcated in us, I think, was an openness to ideas from different areas of life. And this, in turn, we both felt influenced our lives in a fundamental way. And this was, to put it simply, that we understood that it is a virtue in thinking and in practice to consider and, if necessary, take on different ideas than those with which you started. It was, though we did not know it, an understanding similar to that of F. Scott Fitzgerald's dictum, that a first-rate intelligence has the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. And this ability, in my view, would underlay Ivor's characteristics as a thinker and as a teacher. It underlays particular ability to be skeptical of blind enthusiasm and yet supportive of new and different ways of thinking. This was certainly the reason he supported my own attempt at an approach to interdisciplinary research, which I'm hopefully completing. I'm not sure that I am such a first-rate intelligence, but I'm quite sure that Ivor was. His kind of intelligence, curious, consistent, not easily intimidated, insisted on balance and humanity, and committed to meaningful relevance in a time of change and transition is rare. These were qualities which we also deeply appreciated through Ivor's membership of the editorial board of the Africa Governance Papers, published by Good Governance Africa, of which I'm editor. The journal is about to publish its first issue, and I must say that it is sad that Ivor will miss this, as he was very supportive of the new journal. He will indeed be deeply missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that experience that you've had of Ivor, and also the links that that he built with Good Governance Africa, but also other institutions near and far. So yes, indeed. I'm happy to invite another student to give a tribute, Chitsembishu Russell Mulamula. I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by expressing my deepest condolences to the family of my dear teacher and mentor, Prof Ivor Sarakinsky, as well as his students, current and former students, friends and colleagues. To Prof Ivor's family, we hold you dear to our hearts because you gave us such a generous and a charismatic human being who positively touched our lives. The good Prof left footprints in the sense of time, footprints that all aspiring academics like myself seeks to follow, even if it means achieving half of his achievements. Indeed, today is a very sad day for all gathered here to mourn the good Prof who departed us very soon. We have hoped that he will be with us for many years to come. Today, as his students, sorrow fills our hearts, sorrow that cuts deep as our beloved mentor and a supervisor has silently closed his chapter of life and left us. Our lives will be empty in the areas that he positively touched and impacted us. But his memory will live in our hearts as long as we breathe. Our sorrow will be slightly lessened with the comforting thoughts that we had the privilege of knowing him. I heard about the death of Prof Ivor a day after I buried my own father. I have now lost two parents. Prof Ivor was my academic parent, and he was more than a supervisor to me, but a strong supporting structure. We had plans that we were going to continue into next year at the PhD level. Unfortunately, God had other plans for him. I would like to speak in celebration of his life. He lived a life that demanded notice, a life that exemplified brilliance, and a life that inspired emulation. I won't recite his biography, but to highlight few things about his life worth celebrating. I've known Prof since 2019 when I joined the School of Governance as a master student. We became good friends until his ultimate passing. The character of life he lived might be summed up in few words. He was sincere, earnest, supportive, and loyal. Prof was a prolific thinker. He left no one indifferent in his lectures. He was very bright and had a deep passion for education, and he generously shared his knowledge, expertise, and skills with all of his students. He was very passionate about professionalizing the public sector. He understood that the effective way, or the most effective way to professionalize the public sector was through academia, and he was a man of action in that regard. The English proclaimed that, I quote, "Deeds speaks louder than words." My father-in-law, Dr. S.J. Khosa, one of the most prolific composer, gave us a powerful dictum expression in his African song titled Mitero ya Vulavula, meaning deeds speaks. The lyrics goes, I quote, "Deeds speak. They speak in a language that is understood by everyone. Be still. Deeds shall speak. Deeds will manifest themselves to everyone. Good deeds never hide, not at all. Get away, you treacherous one who live by deception. Get off way of progress, you get off. Be still, deeds themselves shall speak." Indeed, good deeds speaks in the language of good governance, the language of excellence, the language of influence, the language of integrity, and the language of positive impact. I can truly say today, Prof Ivor's deeds were visible to all who came to share his journey of life, especially to us, his students. I would like to close with a quote from Vinod Kapoor on one of Prof's favorite topic, the game theory. I quote, "The game gives you a purpose, but the real game is to find a purpose." Prof has lived the life of purpose, and above all, we give thanks for his life. I'm proud to call him my father and mentor. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Shishambiso, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Colleagues and friends, we're coming towards the end of the memorial service. I'm going to hand over to the family for a tribute and invite Dr. Nisi and Hannah to speak to us.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Dean, the head of school, Prof Antoni, Prof Pandi, to all of Ivor's colleagues, students, family, and friends. You asked about the car, and I need to start there. The car was very much a family car in that Ivor's dad bought it, I think, in the late 70s. I then inherited it, and then Ivor took it over, and how he kept it going, I don't think we knew, and he didn't care because he just managed it. So I want to speak to you a bit in terms of Ivor the man, Ivor the family man. I met Ivor when we were both in our early 30s at an all-women's book club. Falling numbers led to a man being invited to the book club, much to my disgust. At the first meeting, Ivor and I had a fierce debate over the merits of Nadine Gordimer's novels. Anyone who knows Ivor, educated guess as to his position. But to my amazement, Ivor suggested that we agree to disagree. and that set the tone for the rest of our relationship. Years later, I realized that he'd paraphrased an idea attributed to Voltaire. Nothing like using a French philosopher to wiggle your way into a woman's heart. Ivor moved to Grahamstown, now Makanda, to lecture in the politics department at Rhodes in 1996, and I joined him later that year with my 5 cats. Ivor was allergic to cats, so I think this showed huge commitment on his part. We got married in Grahamstown, Makanda. Hannah was born there, and we spent 6 happy years there until we moved back to Johannesburg after I was appointed to a lecturing position at the Wits School of Education. The conversation continued between Ivor and I. We used the other as a sounding board, if and when necessary. We came from very different perspectives. My research question started with practice, then went back to theory, and then back into practice. Whereas Ivor applied his vast theoretical knowledge to make sense of current issues, finding patterns and connections that led to his simple yet complex insights. When I was doing my doctorate and got stuck on how to make sense of competing versions of the truth, Ivor suggested I read Wittgenstein's Poker, which unblocked my thinking. His knowledge was encyclopedic, and you can see here all the books, he actually read them. And his ability to understand views that he didn't necessarily share was impressive. Latterly, Ivor really came into his own. He sent me his written articles, enjoyed my laughter at his jokes or his outrageous claims, and encouraged me to send his work to my friendship network, which we dubbed his fan club, and he eagerly awaited any feedback from them. We supported one another unquestioningly in making difficult life decisions. When I found my situation at the Wits School of Education untenable 8 years ago, he supported my decision to resign from Wits. Similarly, when Ivor decided recently to withdraw his application for a permanent appointment as academic director, he had my full support. I asked Ivor about his future plans. He said he wanted to take a sabbatical, to write his book, and also to move his office down the corridor. He fully intended to be known as that grumpy old man, if he wasn't already known as that, and to put a picture of a bulldog on his office door as a warning to all and sundry to keep out. Recently, I was feeling desperate about events in South Africa, and I asked him, what do we do? He thought for a second and quoted Voltaire's final line from Candide, Il faut cultiver notre jardin. A translation is, we must cultivate our garden. I don't think Ivor meant it in the sense of us being selfish, because he would have supported a broader interpretation of this idea. Then he added, wise guy, Voltaire. I think the same could be said of Ivor.
Hi, everyone. I experienced a few university firsts with my dad. Back in the day when the Wits School of Governance was known as PNDM, I sat in my dad's office doing administrative work, which was really just drawing on his whiteboard while he handled the real stuff. And then a few years or months, I can't remember later, I returned to his study, and there were my drawings still on full display. It was then he told me that I had used permanent markers. I still have no idea to this day if he had purposefully given them to me or not. What I've come to admire about my father is that he did things his way. And as long as he was happy, he didn't care what others thought. I also attended my first ever lecture and university exam with Dad. As much as I wish I remembered what he was lecturing about, I don't, because I was completely preoccupied with the fancy lecture theatre chairs that pivoted inwards and outwards, instead of having to be picked up and moved backwards and forwards. I thought university was next level. And I sat through my first exam paper with Dad too. I was set up in the back row, poised with his laptop and mouse in hand, ready to play The Sims 3. While his current students at the time sat and wrote. Something I noticed and can completely relate to now is that students were leaving the exam, shaking their heads and sighing. My dad always talked about lecturing being a performance. While I don't remember much of the lectures I attended, I do know how enthralling he was when he chatted about ideas and current affairs at our dinner table. I remember the many jazz performances we went to together as a family. Incidentally, a few of them being Abdullah Ibrahim concerts, which happened at Wits. Another few university firsts I had with him were sitting in the Great Hall and the Linda Auditorium next to him and falling asleep on his shoulder to the jazz. My dad was a very eccentric man with his crazy striped shirts, which my mom and I had nothing to do with. And of course, this extended to his music taste. He listened to many weird and wonderful things, and he was passionate about musical instruments such as the guitar, hence the choice of the great Jimi Hendrix, as well as the drums. At one point, he even tried to teach himself how to play the bongo drums via YouTube. Dad, I'll always cherish these university first memories I had with you with a smile. Something we always joked about doing was meeting at the Olives and Plates on West Campus for lunch. And I'm sad we never did put our joke aside and just went ahead and do it. Until we meet again at the Great Hall for my graduation. We love you and we will miss you always, Ivor.
Thank you so much to the two of you. We come to a close now, and I want to say, if you have a minute, please look at the chat box, because there are many messages of support and celebration, some deep insights, wonderful recollections. It's worth visiting. We'll collate all of this and make it available later. Some colleagues said that as they looked at Reveal and Hannah speaking, we thought we recognized the room and the rows and shelves of books behind the two of you. We had many an academic meeting with Ivor in that chair, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it'll be one of the enduring memories of Ivor, that picture that we just saw. And as Karen says, now occupied by two loving people. Colleagues and friends, thank you very much for staying with us. I want to thank in particular Mzu and Imran on behalf of WITS, and then on behalf of the school, Pandi and Kamantha and Mankusana and Loratu. On behalf of the students, Richard and Russell, and then on behalf of the family, Reveal and Hannah. Thanks for organizing this, Lorato, so seamlessly. And I was saying quietly on a message to her, play us a little bit more of that music as we exit this memorial service, because this is how we want to remember Ivor, isn't it? In a positive way. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good weekend.